So, Ash, Paulson, a brand new Sonic game is released in the form of Shadow Generations, which takes us to 20-ish original 3D Sonic games. I didn't quite realize that there were this many. And we're not even including stuff like Sonic R. These are just the core 3D platformers. So you and I are going to get together and try and rank these. How are you feeling about this?
I mean, I'm feeling pretty good. I always feel pretty good about Sonic, but I did just I'm coming off of an all-night playthrough of Shadow Generations just because, I wanted to be able to play at least a majority of it to have a pretty good idea of where, I might want to rank it with you. I didn't quite finish it, but I got to the final boss. So I played the vast majority of it. But I got Sonic brain right now because I've been playing Shadow Generations all night.
Yeah, whereas I got to play Shadow Generations a while back, so my experiences are a bit less fresh, but also I've had time to linger and think about them. But it's been a pretty wild year. We've got Shadow Generations, Shadow's coming to Dream Team. We've got Sonic Movie 3. There's just wild stuff happening all over the place. But let's start way back in the 90s with the very first 3D Sonic game. You can argue whether it's 3D, but 3D is in the title. Sonic 3D Blast, or Sonic 3D Flicky's Island, as it's called in Europe. So despite this saying Saturn, this is the Mega Drive version that we're ranking first. I've not included second versions for most of these games, but I feel there are enough things distinct about the Mega Drive and Saturn version for them to be in different tiers. So what are we thinking about the Mega Drive version of 3D?
So I think this is the one of the two versions. I would rank the Saturn version higher. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the game is far from perfect. It's a flawed first foray into 3D for Sonic. But I actually have a bit of a soft spot for this game. Admittedly, more the Saturn version than the Mega Drive version or Genesis version. But I don't think this game is as wretched as some people seem to imply. I think it's okay. There's some fun to be had.
Yeah, I don't think it's anybody's favorite Sonic game. It probably is someone's favorite, but it's definitely not one of ours. It's fun, and the Saturn version has like fully 3D special stages. It's got a different soundtrack. The visuals are a bit different.
Yeah.
I don't quite know how I would rank these. I know it's fairly low. I don't know if the Mega Drive version is D tier, but I also don't know if the Saturn version is B tier.
For me, and you know how I am. I put a lot of weight toward music, and that's just my bias. But I actually do believe that even among Sonic soundtracks, the Sega Saturn version of Sonic 3D Blast is like top tier. It has one of the best Sonic soundtracks of all time, that's a huge.
The lyrical credits music is just stunning.
Yeah, it's just an excellent soundtrack all the way through. Completely different from the Mega Drive one. Although the Mega Drive one also, introduced a lot of bangers that have been remixed in various Sonic games to this day. But I think the special stages are better, much better in the Saturn version. It's probably the best incarnation of the half-pipe special stage there has still ever been, I think. And it looks nicer, of course, given that it's the Saturn compared to the Mega Drive. I personally think I would feel comfortable putting like the Genesis version in C tier and the Saturn version in B tier. But what do you think? Is that too high for the Saturn version?
I feel like it might be, but I think we can come back to this when we have other games alongside it, because then we can say, like, is this game really equal to these games?
Yeah, so if it was like a B- or a C+, that's probably where I'd put the Saturn version, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, Sonic Adventure, I know some people despise this game. This is one of my favorite Sonic games, and
I love this game.
I'm going to whack this straight in ass.
Easy. No argument from me.
The vibes are immaculate. It's still so fun to play today. I am specifically talking about the Dreamcast version.
Right.
The GameCube version, I don't think it's a broken mess, but it's not equal to the Dreamcast one, though. And one thing that both Adventure 1 and Adventure 2 do so well is the Chao Garden is just this loop of replayability. Because there are flaws in these games. They're not all perfect. Not every character is equal. But the Chao Garden kind of makes you forget about all of that because you just end up playing your favorite character in your favorite levels over and over again to raise the Chao. It's this wonderful loop, and I don't know why they haven't done it again. But that's part of why the adventure games are just so special, the Chao Garden.
Like you said, this game's vibes are immaculate, and the Chao Garden is awesome. I still love to this day the way the story, each character's story intersects with one another, and how it all kind of, they come together to form the bigger picture as you play through all the different stories. And it's just, this game is so full of charm. I know it's janky as hell, especially by today's standards, but I don't care. I love this game to death, and it might still have my favorite 3D Sonic soundtrack. I mean, obviously that's a huge bar to clear, but Adventure 1 soundtrack is basically perfect.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love this game to death. S tier, easy.
Yeah. And, back in the day, people would complain about Big the Cat. People love fishing games now.
I know. It's definitely, I mean, I don't enjoy playing as Big in that game, but you could say that he was ahead of the curve in terms of games that would, later do fishing better.
Yeah, Big had the foresight. Anyway, Adventure 2, I think this game has a better Chao Garden. And it does some other things better too. But with Adventure 1, I have a really good time playing as every character. Like, there are ones that I think are lesser than others. But with Adventure 2, I don't love playing as Tails and Eggman.
Yeah.
I feel like Knuckles and Rouge are just a downgrade from Adventure Knuckles. Sonic and Shadow, excellent. All of the levels are excellent.
Yep.
But I feel like this has lower lows that you're kind of forced into that Adventure doesn't have.
I agree. I've always liked Adventure 1 more than 2, despite some of what 2 does better. I don't like the mission-based structure as much either. I liked having that big, that hub world to explore where everything was interconnected with Station Square and the Mystic Ruins. So for me, but like you said, what it does really well, and it has really good highs. For me, it's a pretty solid A tier.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'd go with S.
I agree with A. And it's similar to Adventure 1. You can just play the Sonic and Shadow levels for eternity and just grind your Chao up. And I think a lot of people do that, and that's kind of why they forget about the lesser points of Adventure 2. And like that, there's merit to that. But I personally believe that Adventure 1 is the better game.
Yeah, I think so too. Of course, we have to give Adventure 2 credit for introducing Shadow, of course.
Yes.
Which is a huge deal. And there was that really cool Green Hill Zone bonus level. It was pretty cool playing Green Hill Zone in 3D. Yeah. But yeah, for me, Adventure 2 I like it a lot, but it never quite hits the highest highs of Adventure 1 throughout for me.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the first multi-platform 3D Sonic game. I think Advance might have come before this, but Sonic Heroes on PlayStation 2, Xbox, and GameCube. This is a complicated one for a lot of people. What do you feel about Heroes?
I remember liking it at the time more than quite a few others seem to, but I also remember being immensely frustrated by especially Team Dark's levels and just how unfair and punishing they can be in terms of just some of the jank in the game. So I'm torn. I feel like at the time I felt pretty much like it was a B, and I might still be there, but like, I don't know. It's been a long time, and I haven't played it in quite a while. But I remember having like immense pain points of frustration, and that makes me think maybe it's closer to a C. But I'm kind of unsure. What do you think?
There are definitely points of frustration. I think a single playthrough is pretty good. The problem is you're essentially playing it 4 times to get to the ending. Because you've got 4 different teams. They all basically have the exact same levels. Like Team Roses are shorter and easier, despite being the 3rd in the selection. Team Darks is hard mode, despite being the 2nd in the selection. And the only real different one is Team Chaotix, who have like a mission-based structure to all these levels. So it gets pretty repetitive. But if you were just to boot up and play Team Sonic and hit credits, I think you'd have a pretty good time.
I think if you do just that, it's like a pretty solid B.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about, completing the game, getting to Metal Overlord, seeing the true final battle and all that, it kind of drops a little bit, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that's a C tier.
Yeah, and I think if we're going to regard Adventure 1 and Adventure 2 as having completed them and seeing the final boss and final story, we have to do the same across the board, right?
Yeah. But then we have Shadow the Hedgehog. Shadow the Hedgehog was the first game that I saved up and bought with my own money at full price. Up until then, I only bought like used games or I had like birthday and Christmas presents. But I was so excited for Shadow the Hedgehog that I had to save up.
That's so good. I still remember when I got it. Yeah.
I didn't have like a terrible time with it. Like I don't think it's like it's not the worst game of all time that some people may lead you to believe. No, it's also not one of the high ones.
It's not very good. Yeah, it's definitely not one of the... And this is another one where you have to play through quite a few different routes. Now, to be fair, there is quite a bit of appreciable variation in the stages in each route. So you're not going to see everything in the game just playing one time through. And so there are actually a lot of different cool things you can see, different stages you can find, but you're still playing the same game over and over. I don't think it's D tier though. I think it's C.
I think it's pretty equal to Heroes for different reasons.
Yeah.
It does take a lot to see the true ending, because you got to play every level in the evil and neutral and hero routes, and
exactly
that does get repetitive. But for what they did in giving Shadow a gun and everything, they kind of stuck the landing. As ridiculous as it is, they didn't fall as badly as they could have with this one.
Well, and it's just something that is so I almost can't imagine the franchise without this game existing, because Shadow holding an AK is just like, that's become such an iconically weird element of this amazing franchise.
Yeah.
That I'm kind of glad it exists in this absurd form,
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Well, then we have Sonic 06, the HD debut of Sonic.
Oh man.
Haha.
I mean, I want to knock it into S tier just for the absurdity of the Elise and Sonic romance nonsense, but of course we can't do that. I mean, it's what could we possibly say about this game in the year 2024 that hasn't been said about it? It's terrible. It's awful. It's broken. It is actually broken. It was released in an unfinished state. It's got to be D tier, right? I mean, it's charming in its own weird way. It's got a banger soundtrack. It's got Mephiles. I mean, God, Mephiles. Yeah, it's got Sonic dying and having to be brought back to life with a kiss by a human girl. I mean, there's so much wrong with this game, but I also love the weirdness. Yeah. But it's still a D tier, right? It's like
people love it for its ambition. You can tell that this could have been a really good game with more time.
I wanted it to be. God, I was so hyped for it at the time.
It is basically Adventure 3. It's that formula again.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Adventure 2 in there. There's a lot of Adventure 1 theming. It's got the hub world back. But it just wasn't finished.
Man, it could have been something really special though. And there's a fan remake of it, Project 06, I think it's called, which has really been showing some impressive stuff.
It's very good. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Then we get into the Wii storybook duo, so Secret Rings. I like this game more than most. I've heard this referred to as the worst Sonic game, and I do not agree with that at all. The controls aren't that bad. Like, it's just on-rail Sonic. You're just tilting left and right. It's pretty responsive for what it is. There is some quirkiness, like you've got to hold it backwards to step back, and there's a bunch of missions between the core stages which aren't very good. But then you've got Sonic just like running around with dinosaurs. You've got Sonic riding around on a magic carpet. I think this is a good game. Not D tier, maybe not B tier, but a solid C, I'd say.
Yeah, this is tough. If there was like a C-, that's probably where I'd knock it. I do not like this game more than most. I'm not a big fan of it, but I do agree with you. It's not the worst Sonic game ever. Not even close. I don't love it, and I think it's got one of the weaker soundtracks in the series, but I don't think it's B, but I don't feel comfortable putting it in D.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good C.
I'm happy with that. And then we got Sonic and the Black Knight. So I replayed these duo for a video last year, I believe. And Black Knight, I came away with a far stronger impression than I did when I played it when it came out. The soundtrack's really good. The story is really good. And it improves upon Secret Rings in most ways. Like, there's a lot of waggle, which Secret Rings didn't really have. But the core platforming and level designs are all a lot of fun. You can play as Sonic, Shadow, Knuckles, and was there another playable character? There may have been.
Was it Blaze, maybe?
Blaze. Yeah, you can play as all of them, and they're all a lot of fun. I think this might be a B tier for me.
You know, it's weird. I always liked this game more than Secret Rings, even back at its original release. I think it was just better in pretty much every way across the board. Is it better enough to go into B tier? It's hard. Because then I feel weird saying, man, Black Knight above Sonic Heroes. But then again, maybe that is, this is when it gets a little tough with the tiers. But
yeah,
I do. We put 3D Blast in B tier, Saturn version, and I think Black Knight is probably, is at least as good as that. So yeah.
Okay, well let's do it.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
And then we've got two versions of Sonic Unleashed. Let's start with the HD version. There is a very passionate fan base these days. When this game came out, it was kind of hit hard. Like, the critics didn't really like it. A lot of fans are underwhelmed by it. But I think in a similar vein to Adventure and Adventure 2, when you have 100% save file and can just play the stuff you want to play, this game is delightful. Just playing those daytime stages is a lot of fun. When you're doing a fresh playthrough, though, and you have to do the Werehog stuff, which takes up a lot more time than modern stuff, and you've got to grind out to get moon medals and sun medals to get more levels.
Yeah.
I don't think it holds up quite so well, but the core daytime levels are still some of the best that Boost Sonic has ever done.
Yeah, and I mean, the highs are so incredibly high in this game, and it really can't be overstated how amazing the debut of those Boost-style stages, of that Boost-style gameplay was at the time. Like, we had never played that kind of modern Sonic game before with, like, you know, in that kind of gameplay context, and it was, in my opinion, revelatory for the series to the point that they're still using it.
Yeah.
And I think for good reason, because when they nail it, it is absolutely iconic for what Sonic stands for. You feel the speed. You actually feel as fast as Sonic is, right? Like, it just feels so gratifying to speed through those daytime levels and learn them and get better and better and better. It's just, there's so much nuance to the gameplay, and the highs are so high in this game. But then, like you said, they're dragged down by the minutia of grinding the sun and moon medals. Even though the Werehog gameplay, while obviously is the weaker part of the game, I don't think the Werehog gameplay is horrible as it was made out to be back in its time. It's a very standard, maybe substandard action, 3D action game, but it's not the worst thing ever.
Yeah, I'm struggling where to rank this exactly, because my heart kind of says A.
Really? Okay.
Just because those daytime levels are so good. But,
yeah, I'm torn between B and A, I guess.
Yeah, because I think it is above everything else in B. But it depends what you're judging,
so too.
Though. It depends what you're judging, because, you know, once you've got that complete save file, this game is just a joy to play. But then when you don't have that and you're playing it from scratch, it's give and take.
Man, I'm really struggling between A and B on this one. Like you said, the obviously the highs, being the daytime stages, are still the lesser portion of the game in terms of how many gameplay hours you get of those versus gameplay hours of Werehog levels and metal grinding, right?
Yeah.
I guess I'm like feeling maybe A. It's hard to say though. I don't know.
You just shout a letter around. We'll put it there.
Oh man. Let's just go with let's go with B. There's too much. There's too many valleys between the peaks, I think.
Okay, that's fine. And then we have the Wii version. So the Wii version, a completely different game. It's got some of the same level themes,
right?
Not all of them, but the actual level design is completely different. The core mechanics feel different, and there's also less fat. There's not a hub world. You just go from level to level. There's less to grind. The Werehog stuff is a bit shorter. But the modern stages, while good, do not hit the same highs.
Right. I did not finish the Wii version. I only played like part of it, so I can't comment as definitively, obviously, as you can, because you played the whole thing. So, yeah, I'll defer to you, man. I didn't play as much of it.
Yeah.
It definitely seems to me, even though I didn't play the full game, to be the lesser of the two versions of Sonic Unleashed. But I don't know that I'd go so far as to put it in C tier either, based on what I played.
It's difficult, yeah. Some people prefer the Wii version. I don't think I land there. I think the Wii version has pros over the HD version, but it doesn't hit the same highs. And the reason that we almost put Unleashed in A is because it has very high highs, but it's also very middling in other areas.
Yeah.
So I think C is a good place to put it. It's still a good game. I think everything in C tier is a good game, but I don't think it deserves to quite stand alongside the HD one.
See, now I'm kind of waffling now, thinking maybe we should put HD Unleashed in A. I'm kind of waffling on that now.
Well, are we thinking bumping these both up? Maybe this goes in A and this goes in B?
That's kind of what I'm thinking, yeah.
Okay.
What do you think?
I mean, I do think We Unleashed is better than Secret Ring, Shadow.
That's what I'm
Sonic
thinking
Heroes.
too.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think Unleashed HD is better than 3D Blast and Black Knight.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. All right.
Yeah.
All right, then we've got Sonic Colors. When this game came out, it was like proclaimed as the savior of Sonic. Like Sonic's finally got it right.
Yeah, it was.
And then all these years later, some people hate it now. Where do you land?
I mean, I guess it doesn't help with his perception of the HD version, right? Sonic Colors, or not HD, the remaster, Sonic Colors Ultimate didn't quite, wasn't quite the remaster that people were hoping for a variety of reasons. But back in its day, I really enjoyed this on Wii. But I do think it gets bogged down with too many gimmicky acts. Like every major world has like Act 4, Act 5, I think up to 5 acts. And
I think it goes higher. It might be like 6 or 7.
Might be, yeah. And typically everything after Acts 1 and 2 was just, they were these really gimmicky, just kind of weirdly paced mini levels that just weren't very fun. Some of them were, but by and large, they were incredibly forgettable. But on the other hand, the first 2 acts of each world, really good stuff. Great boost style gameplay, great 2D sections. The first 2 acts in each level, I'd say, are really good.
Yeah, I agree.
Great music, fun story.
Zones too. Like we've got like Tropical Resort, we've got Aquarium Park, we've got Planet Wisp. Like all of them. Every level in this game is good. But like you say, I think that the reason I've heard for that is apparently everything was designed as one big level, and there's like code for that in the game. But at some point in development, they just cut all the acts apart and then just shoved in some to just pad out the runtime. Because Colors is a pretty short game. You can finish this in around 3 hours, and it still pads itself out to reach that 3-hour mark.
Right.
But there is a lot of good in here, though. The core levels are great. Act 1 and Act 2, all great. The soundtrack is... I love Aquarium Park soundtrack. That's one of my favorite Sonic tracks.
Yeah.
And just it's a good game. It's just a good game across the board.
Starlight Carnival is just magical.
Yes.
The music and the visuals in that, just absolutely magical. I don't know. I don't know if I'm struggling between A and B, I guess, again. But maybe there is so much padding with the many gimmicky levels that I'm thinking maybe closer to B.
Maybe a high B. We'll put it at the highest point in B that you can go.
Yeah.
All right. We've got 2 versions of Generations. The way that we're ranking them is this is Sonic Generations, and the last one is Shadow Generations, and we'll get to that at the end. But just the core Sonic Generations. Where do you feel that ranks?
I have always loved the crap out of this game. I loved it back in its day. I still love it now. To me, A is the floor, and to me, this is a pretty easy S. What do you think?
Agreed, yeah.
I love this game.
It's not a flawless game.
No.
I think classic Sonic is not loyal to the Mega Drive. He doesn't feel like he does, but he's still a lot of fun. That spin dash is nuts.
It's so fast. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
There's those little missions you've got to do before getting a Chaos Emerald in each segment, and those missions aren't all equal.
No.
But I think every core level is pretty much good. Planet Wisp might be the only kind of like lesser part of that game.
Right.
But
and that's
otherwise,
only 1 out of 9 major levels, right? Yeah.
Otherwise, I think, easy S.
Yeah, easy S, and insane soundtrack too. One of the best even among Sonic. So good.
All right, the Wii U version of Sonic Lost World.
Oh, man. This is a weird one, because this game, in my opinion, starts off really strong.
Yeah.
I like when I first started playing this game, I'm like, oh man, I think they could really cook something here. And then I can almost pinpoint the exact part about halfway through the game where the level design just takes a giant dump, and then the rest of it just isn't nearly as fun. The first half of this game is great. The second half is so mid and so frustrating at times.
I agree. Yeah, they start like reusing levels as well. Like it's like Windy Valley again, but there's snow around now. It's so odd. But yeah, the core is good. This was like the first. I think it might be the first 60 FPS. I know Sonic Adventure 2 was 60 FPS. It might be the first HD 60 FPS Sonic game at the very least on console.
Might be.
And the core gimmick's good. I love the spherical design of like walking around and just finding different routes. And slowing Sonic down was good. I like Boost Sonic. I prefer adventure-style Sonic. So sure. I liked slowing him down and making it more deliberate. So yeah, the core I loved. But like you say, it just, somewhere in the middle, it just drops down. So I don't quite know how to rank it, because I do like it a lot, but I don't love it all the way through, though.
I do also think the parkour system could have been better messaged or explained. Like, I think there was a kernel of a good idea there, because of course Sonic would be good at parkour. But I don't think it's implemented very well in a gameplay sense, or at least as well as it could be.
And the Deadly Six, I hate them.
Zavok, man.
And they keep chatting in their boss battles, too, and sometimes in core levels they appear and they just ruin the pace.
I
think this might be equal to some other games in B tier, but
I think that's probably fair.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do we think Sonic Lost World is better than Sonic Heroes? Well, we're talking about 100%ing Sonic Heroes. Though,
yeah, but then we're talking about 100%. Well, I guess finishing Lost World too, and maybe it is equal to Sonic Heroes.
It's hard. I'm definitely struggling between a B and a C for Lost World.
I think if we were ranking the best moments, it's a B. If we're ranking all its moments, it's a C.
Yeah, all right. Let's go with that.
Lost World 3DS is a D. That game sucks.
Yeah. No, you know what? I will say, the special stages are actually pretty cool. I like the special stages. That's the only thing in that game that I like. Yeah.
I was pretty excited for this, because this was like the first 3D handheld Sonic game.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not very
good. And speaking of the 3D, that's why the special stages are so cool. Like, the 3D effects actually were really cool, but that's as far as it goes.
Yeah. There's not much more to say about that one.
You know, I just realized they didn't include Generations 3DS on this list.
Well, it's more of a 2D game still.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
The boost stuff is more or less, yeah.
Good point.
Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric.
I mean, it's obviously a D tier, but that Knuckles Infinite Jump glitch is really funny. Yeah. At least. But yeah.
Yeah, there's no discussion there. Okay.
Yeah, there's nothing to say, yeah.
Sonic Forces, I think this is an interesting one to judge, because it is mechanically sound. It's not broken. It is fully playable, but it's also just kind of really boring.
It is so incredibly mid, and the story is monumentally stupid. And then you've got Infinite, which is also a monumentally stupid villain. When you find out what his motivations are, and they just build him up to be something so big, and he's basically just pissed that Shadow beat his ass.
Yeah.
And that's really all it is. He's mad because he got his ass beat.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's really his whole character arc. And I don't know. He has a kick-ass boss theme song though. Like his theme song is great.
Yeah.
Infinite.
Yeah, you can talk me down from this, but I feel like it's worse than everything in C tier. I think it's D. I think it's just not very fun. It's perfectly fine, but there's nothing that makes me say like I want to play this again. Whereas everything else in C tier, I probably would play again.
Man, I'm tough. This one's tough because I don't think it's as. I mean, the games we put in D tier are either broken or just really bad.
Yeah.
And Sonic Forces is neither broken nor really bad. It's just incredibly Yeah. You know? So for that reason I feel like it maybe should go toward the bottom or at the bottom of C.
Okay.
Rather just because it's so mid. It's not horrible or broken. It's just you know?
Yeah.
And it's got a killer soundtrack to back it up at least. So there's that.
If we had more numbers in between these, I think it would go in its own little column between C and D, because it's...
Yeah.
You're right, it's not broken. It's not as bad... Well, it's not as broken as everything else in D tier, but it's also just so uninspired. And it was so disappointing too, because we had Lost World between Generations and Forces, but in terms of like that Boost era, we had like a 6 or 7 year gap between these games, and then we get something that's a total downgrade. And it did things that other Sonic games had already done recently. Like it brought classic Sonic back, and he's somehow worse than Generations, but Mania just did that. And Green Hill's back, and Mania did that. Generations did that. It was so uninspired.
And they had the audacity to have Mania and Forces connected story-wise.
Yeah.
When we found out that Forces was a canonical sequel to Mania, like that was with the Phantom Ruby and all. Oh, I was so annoyed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Sonic Frontiers, the last main big standalone game. How do you feel about that? Like a year or two on.
This would be a really interesting discussion, even more than it already is if Steve was here, because he was originally going to be on this video, but unfortunately he couldn't make it at the last second. But Steve, rather famously, does not like Frontiers at all, or at least didn't like it very much. He's very bullish on that. I am not. I realize that Frontiers is full of jank, but then so are a lot of the other games in this tier list. And I don't mind, because I think the highs of Frontiers are so high that I don't really, mind the fumbles as much. I love the open world areas. I know the pop-in is terrible. Yes, the graphic, that's an issue. But when it comes to the gameplay, I don't really care, because just running around as Sonic in the open world feels amazing. And the cyberspace levels are fun. I wish there were more themes for them, but the cyberspace levels are fun. There's a lot of course correcting going on with the story. I love some of the course correcting they do with specific characters, especially Tails, because he needed it. I like a lot of the character work that's done in Frontiers. Obviously, amazing soundtrack. The boss fights, even though they're janky as hell, they're so epic. I like Frontiers. What about you?
A common theme with a lot of these 3D games is the core is great, but then they don't quite manage it for the whole duration. And I think Frontiers is similar. The first few worlds, I think, are really good. But then you get towards the end, and it feels like it's running out of steam. It feels like ideas aren't quite working. One of the final worlds has a lot of 2D sections that you can't just run out of. You have to either find a part where you can drop out or do the entire section, and that's tedious. 2D doesn't really belong in an open zone. I don't really know why they put it in there. But otherwise, though, I think I'm going to echo what you said. Most of it's just fun. It's fun just to move around as Sonic in a huge open space. And I had a really good time with it.
It does some cool lore stuff, too, with the chaos-looking aliens. I don't know. I think Frontiers kind of signals a new era for Sonic in terms of course-correcting a lot of the stuff that went wrong with Forces, of course, and other games. So I think it's a good starting point for a new era of Sonic, but I think B is definitely the floor. I'm struggling between A and B.
I don't think it's Adventure 2 and Unleashed level.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. I don't know if I put it at the bottom of B either.
No, I wouldn't either. Like it's probably at the very top of B. I just like right there. But it's a good game. It's one of those things where like you can clearly see the stepping stones for the future, but you just kind of wish that they had it there without needing those stepping stones. I just wish it was like the package they shipped was the thing that we're trying to reach towards. But this one's interesting. So Sonic Dream Team, the Apple Arcade exclusive 3D Sonic platformer. I think the core's really good, but again, like a lot of these games, it makes you do a lot of missions to kind of progress to the next level. And they mixed it up. Like you've got different playable characters. You've got like Sonic, Tails, Cream, Knuckles, Rouge. It's fun. I think it's a fun game. But there's a lot of downtime between getting to new content, and it can feel a bit slow at times because of that. But I really do enjoy the core gameplay a lot.
It very much feels like a mobile game in that sense, where there's so much downtime between. Like getting to the new content, but the content the core content that's there is really fun. I didn't finish it, so I can't speak quite as authoritatively on it. I only played the first couple of worlds. As much as I was enjoying it, it just comes down to I didn't want to play it on my phone, and I don't have an Apple TV to play it on the big screen. So this is a game that I would love to see come to consoles or Steam one day, because I'd love to play it with a proper controller on a bigger screen,
Definitely tighten this game up. Like if it was on a console and they, I don't know, maybe they gave more core acts and just scratched some of the side stuff. I think this would be a lot of fun. And there's also like a lot of red rings to collect to actually unlock more levels. So a lot of the time you're stopping and like looking around, and like you've got a fully 360-degree camera. So a lot of the time you just stop, come to a complete stop, and just sort of search around to see if there's like any red rings anywhere. And that's not how you want to play, really. So I think this studio, Sega Hardline, I think they are fully capable, and I'd love them to take on a core 3D Sonic.
Same.
But they probably didn't have the time and money to put everything they wanted in. But the core is good. The core is very good.
Let them take on an Adventure 1 remake.
I think they could do it.
I think so. So yeah, I think you should. Definitely let's lead with your rating because I didn't finish it. I feel like it's somewhere around like low B maybe, but low B and high C.
It'd be a high B if they just landed everything without the fluff. But the core is good. I think it's equal to Unleashed and Black Knight for sure.
Yeah, cool.
All right, and then we've got Shadow Generations.
All right.
This is a tricky one because it's definitely without a doubt a good game. It's packaged with Unleashed and when you with Generations, and when you go back and forth between them, I think Generations levels have more polish. I think Shadow Generations has a lot of wide design, whereas Generations has more vertical design. So in Shadow Generations, there's a lot of paths that you can choose to go out of your way to go to on the left and right. But it doesn't quite have the ebb and flow that Generations has. So you kind of have to go out of your way to go get those levels. They're also a lot longer, which I guess you can see as a pro or a con, but everything's like 5 minutes long. But there's also a lot of highs about this game.
Yeah, like I said, I just obviously it's much fresher for me because I just finished playing through the majority of the Shadow Generations campaign overnight. But I had a great time pretty much unilaterally, or I have had a great time. I can't think of a single level where I was like, this is a drag, or I'm not feeling this. Like, I pretty much enjoyed every Act 1 and Act 2. And honestly, even the challenge acts, they've been mostly pretty fun. And actually, I might enjoy the challenge acts specifically. I might enjoy those more than in Sonic Generations. That's the one part I might say I like more in Shadow Generations. Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole white space open zone is more exciting than what Base Generations has.
It's really fun to explore
Yeah, it's that middle ground between Frontiers and Generations where you can just run around, explore. Like, it's not the core of the game, but there's a lot you can do there. A lot of unlockables and
there's a lot of stuff to find.
Yeah,
there's like 96 chests to find or something, and lots of keys to find to unlock them. Like, there's an expansive world to explore here that I really enjoy. And one thing I was not expecting about Shadow Generations was for it to be Sonic Forces. Or the redemption arc of Sonic Forces, because Sunset Heights, dude, those levels are so fun. It's one of the best levels,
to be honest.
It's one of the best levels, and the music slaps so hard. Like they were like, we're gonna make right by Forces. We're gonna make this. We're gonna give you good memories of at least one level from Sonic Forces. I think this is an A. I think it's great, good to great across the board. Personally, what about you?
I agree. It's an A. I think the Act 2s are fine. Act 1 is always like, this is the cool part that I'm going to replay and remember. Act 2, they're pretty good, but they don't have the same highs. But it's fun just to get more of Sonic Generations. It's fun just to re-explore more 3D Sonic levels reimagined in this way. And there is a lot of redemption going on. It's also just nice to revisit Shadow's story, because this legitimately... I was always fascinated by what Adventure 2 and Shadow the Hedgehog told story-wise. I thought it was actually quite good. And this gives it better writing, it recontextualizes a lot of stuff. It's just a good, fun game with a banging soundtrack, great level design, and it's packaged in with Generations as well. So you're getting an S-tier game and an A-tier game, which is it's basically the best you can get from Sonic.
And it's also really cool if you go out of your way for the optional character dialogue with all the NPCs. Like, there's some really cool character moments. You can maybe kind of suss out a few hints of things they might be setting up toward the future, or for the future. And just some cool, kind of cool character writing, like Sonic Frontiers had. They're clearly really doubling down on course correcting the story and really going back to that era that I loved about Dreamcast era Sonic, where they really were focusing more on story, which I know there's that crowd out there who's like, it's Sonic, the story's dumb, you don't need a story. No, the Sonic universe is cool, damn it, and I love Sonic lore, and I'm happy we're getting more of it finally.
Yeah. So according to our tier, 3D Sonic is perfectly balanced between good and bad.
That's so funny, you're right. Yeah.
And I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, I think so too. I figure we kind of go back over and see if there's anything we want to move after the fact. And I think, as much as I do think the Saturn version of 3D Blast is obviously the better one, I don't know if it's better enough to be a whole tier above, right? Because is it really as good? Is it really on the same level as Sonic Frontiers and Sonic Colors?
Probably not.
No. I would probably put it at the top of C.
Okay. This was only really include, like, there's multiple versions of a few of these games. There's like Adventure DX and there's Sonic Colors Ultimate. I thought this one was different enough because it has like slightly different content to be considered a slightly different game. But you're right, they are very similar. There aren't that many differences.
And as much as I want to rank it high, in a higher tier just because of the soundtrack, that's kind of being disingenuous. So yeah. But what about the others? Anything else you feel like you want to move around, or are you feeling pretty good about this?
I'm feeling pretty good. I think if I had complete control, I probably would throw Forces down, but there's solid reasoning for why it shouldn't be quite on the level of 06 and Lost World, 3DS, and Rise of Lyric.
Right. Yeah.
But, I don't think everything in C is equal. There's definitely high Cs and low Cs.
It's tough, yeah.
Yeah.
Do we think 3D Blast is the highest game in C?
No.
Like, what would we put as... What would you want to put as the highest game in C? Heroes or Shadow the Hedgehog? Or
I don't know what I would rank higher, Heroes or Shadow the Hedgehog. Shadow probably... I don't know. I think if you're doing just one playthrough of Sonic Heroes, you're having a pretty good time.
Yeah.
But Shadow the Hedgehog also has a lot of repetition because you're replaying levels different ways. But you're doing them different ways, though, so there's a bit more variety in there. Yeah, I think Heroes is probably maybe a hair above Shadow.
Probably. So maybe Heroes at the top of C tier, Shadow right behind it, and then the 3D Blast games.
Okay.
And then, that looks pretty good, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I think I'd rather go back and play 3D Blast over Lost World, honestly, just because of the second half of that game. It's just,
There's a good soundtrack in Lost World, though. I love that rail grinding on underwater. I forget what it's called, but it's amazing.
No, that one's Aquarium Tunnel. Is that it?
That might be it.
Maybe. Oh, I can't. Yeah, or no, that's. I'm thinking of Aquarium Park from Sonic Colors. Yeah, I'm not sure, but I know which one you're talking about. No, it's Deep Sea. I know which one you're talking about. It's Deep Sea something, but yeah.
Yeah.
That song slaps. And then I guess, so B tier, we got Frontiers at the top, followed by Colors, Black Knight, We Unleashed, and Dream Team. Yeah, I think this is looking pretty good.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's our definitive ranking of 3D Sonics. We'll put a link in the description if you want to rank your own and tag us on socials to see where you rank them. But otherwise, I'm happy. Are you happy?
I think so. I'm pretty happy. It's always tough when doing tier lists like these, especially when you don't have half grades. But I think I'm liking the look of this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for watching, everybody. And again, if you want to do your own tier list and show us, you absolutely can. Just find our socials in the description. And if you want to, you can support us over on Patreon, where you can ask questions during the GVG cast. You can see videos early. And there's also tiers where you can ask us questions. So if you ever want us to do our own little quick tier list for whatever you want us to do, you can with a personalized video. So thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.